Okay, at 6:30, we'll call the Sawyer County Board of Supervisors Thursday, March 16, 2023 meeting to order, please. Madam Clerk, may we have roll call?
Dale Schluter.
Here.
Jesse Betcher. Tweed Schuman.
Here.
Stacy Hessel. Jason Weaver.
Here.
Mark Helwig.
Here.
Thomas Duffy. Marshall Savitsky.
Here.
Brian Bizinet.
Here.
Michael Maestri.
Here.
Chris Rusk. I believe he's
Chris Rusk.
virtual.
Here.
Okay.
I'm here.
John Wigheimer.
Here.
Ron Kinsley is excused. Ron Buckholtz.
Present.
Ed Peters.
Here.
You have a
Wonderful.
quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Let the record indicate we have a quorum. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, may we have certification of compliance with open meetings law, please?
This meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Thank you. Meeting agenda has been presented. Number 6, public comment. I have 2 requests for public comment. We'll start with Miss Monica Isham, please. State your name and address, please, ma'am.
Hi, everyone. I'm Attorney Monica Isham. My address is 7676 North Lesniak Road in Hayward, Wisconsin. Go.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of myself as candidate for Sawyer County Circuit Court Judge. I am born and raised Sawyer County resident, and I've lived and worked here my entire life, so most of you are probably already familiar with me. For those of you who aren't, I just want to use my short, brief time here to convey what I think is one of my most important characteristics, and that's that I have genuine desire to be a benefit to my community. I have a balance in my life experiences that, I'm as an LCO tribal member who grew up on a reservation, but also attended Hayward Community School District. I'm an attorney who currently represents the tribe, but has also years of experience as a circuit court appointed representative. I'm also a community member who serves on boards and committees like the LCO University Board of Regents, and also the Hayward School District Parent Advisory Committee. I believe that the balance in my life experiences will translate into the balance on the bench and the decisions that I will have to make. Sorry, my kids are calling me. Decisions that I'll have to make that are going to affect the diversity in our county as far as LCO tribal members and non-LCO tribal members. I also quickly, before I run out of time, want to personally invite you all to an event for the campaign that I'm hosting next Friday, March 24th, from 4 to 6 at the Seven Winds Convention Center. I passed a flyer around. I only brought one, sorry. And I hope to see you all there, and I look forward to more interaction with this board in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next I have Miss Tish Kiana, please. State your name and address for public comment.
Hi, Tish Kiana, 16033 West 4th Street, Hayward, Wisconsin. Good evening, everyone. I am a child support attorney for Lakuta Ray. I had the opportunity to speak with some of the other board members beforehand, just to visit. We have been working on an MOU between Sawyer County Child Support, LCO Child Support, and the Bureau of Child Support And since I wasn't able to attend the last public safety committee meeting, and I will not be able to attend the next one, I had hoped to be able to just show up in person and give you all an update. I know that Mr. Alvarado will probably mention the MOU as well later on, but we are moving forward with it. We were this close to getting it done. And then I do realize that the county is requesting some additional time to work on it. So I just wanted to say, I'm sorry I won't be able to be at the next committee meeting, but hopefully as we move forward, then we keep this good, positive relationship going. I'm sure we will. But I just want you to know when you don't see me there, we're still moving behind the scenes. So thank you for your time. And I look forward to seeing you guys again, hopefully next month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone online? Alex, for public comment? All right, thank you. Moving on to number 7, consider approval of our meeting minutes, February 16th, 2023. Any questions, concerns, additions, anyone? Mr. Duffy?
I move we approve them as presented.
Okay, Mr. Hellwig?
I'll second that.
Okay, I got a motion by Mr. Duffy, second by Mr. Hellwig to approve our meeting minutes as presented. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 8, zoning committee chair report. Mr. Betcher?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I was not at the last month's zoning, so if it's okay with you, I'd have the Vice Chair, Mr. Buckholz, present.
You bet.
Yeah,
Mr. Buckholz?
Mr. Betcher asked me to do the, excuse me, the zoning for report. And I have it here. The zoning committee held its monthly public hearing on February 17th. There was no rezones request for February. The committee approved 2 conditional use permits for gravel pit renewals. And we are still continuing discussion on amending the ordinance to clarify the language defining multi-dwelling development and resorts. So we're still working on that. That's getting to be quite an ordeal here, I guess. But and then our next meeting will take place tomorrow morning at 8:30. And if there's no questions, that ends my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buckholz. Any questions for zoning? If not, appreciate that, Mr. Buckholz. We'll move on then to number 9, Public Safety Committee report. That's you again, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not gonna go through the whole thing here because there's quite a bit. I'm just gonna go through the important stuff or what I think is important. The Sheriff's Department report to Communication Center. 2 new employees were hired, 2 resigned due to pursue other employment. 2 new dispatchers are doing well, but the department is still shorthanded. They continue to receive applications for dispatchers, have several people shadowing that position, and they are using a 911 skill test to help reduce the turnover rates. Patrol report was provided by Sheriff Morotek, reviewed the highlights of the report, including having 10 crashes, including 1 fatality. The Berkey went well with a large number of skiers. 1 conditional job offer is out for a road deputy. Jail report was also provided by the sheriff. We have an individual on electronic monitoring. They are tracking employment status of inmates. At this time, there's 82% are unemployment. They are working with the Justice Point on programs to reduce unemployment. And they are made an offer to replace the court security deputy to fill the vacancy. They are receiving applications for jail staff and hopefully finding some new of these positions. Emergency management, written report was provided by Mrs. Rapinski, had submitted to the initial of the WTF grant to help the highway cleanup. Dates for upcoming active shooter large-scale exercises in August and March. And the sheriff recognized Mrs. Rapinski for her excellent work in the new position. I know this one's on the agenda and the child support for MOU in the final copy is not ready yet. So I suppose Mr. Alvarado will be saying something about that too. And then the next one I got here is the resolution in support of the increased county funding. A resolution supporting increased county child support funding was presented for the consideration, asking the legislators to approve the increased funding request. So that's going to be coming up, and that's all I'm going to report on for right now, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Buckholz. So we've got a resolution presented in front of us to pass, and it's a resolution in support of increased county child support funding.
Great.
Correct, Mr. Alvarado?
Yes, that's correct. It's a request to increase the budget allocation to county child support agencies in the state
Wonderful.
budget.
Mr. Helwig.
I make a motion to, in support of increased county child support funding
Okay,
resolution.
Mr. Schleter.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion by Mr. Helwig, second by Mr. Schleter to approve the resolution in support of increased county child support funding. Is there any further discussion? If not, Madam Clerk, do you want to set the voting up, please? Motion and a second to support increased county child support funding.
Okay, voting is open. It should show up on the screen shortly.
Okay. Open to
And I
vote.
need to collect the vote for Mr. Rusk. Chris?
Chris Rusk, how do you vote?
How about Mr. Maestri?
In favor.
Mr. Peters?
I vote yes.
Okay, I don't have his clicker up here, but Peters is yes. So I do not have Chris Rusk vote. Should I close it?
Yep, I close it.
It's not allowing me to close it. There it is. Okay, 12-0.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
Actually 13-0, including Mr. Peters.
Thank you. All right, moving on to the letter C. Andy or Mr. Buckholz, you want to take that?
So in the course of the CJCC's meetings this last year, they identified the need to amend the bylaws. On page 2 of the bylaws that are in your packet, it shows the changes highlighted in red. And these have been approved at the CJCC and are forwarded onto the board for approval. Item 6 under Article 4 allows the CJCC to designate subcommittees and work groups to accomplish their work. And then under Article 5, membership, there was a discrepancy in the number of members after the last change. So this just solidifies that it is a 15-member body. It adds one additional person from the Sawyer County Health and Human Services. And then there's 14 members as the chair is non-voting. And it also allows the jail administrator to send a designee to the meetings rather than the jail administrator.
Okay. So entertain a motion then to approve the CJCC Sawyer County bylaws as amended. Mr. Helwig,
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
second by Mr. Savitsky. Is there any further discussion on the amendments to the CJCC bylaws? If not, we'll do a voice vote on this one. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, letter D, guys, CJCC appointments, March 2023.
Yeah, and the discussion about the bylaws, there was with the additional added position, that's item L on the list, appoints Julia Lyons, Public Health Officer, as the Health and Human Services Representative. And then in addition to that, there's been a couple changes since the last time the appointments were approved. Grant Gerber is taking one of the resident positions, and Lieutenant Mike Wohler is now the jail administrator. So we're adding we just wanted to show you the full list, but the ones highlighted in yellow are the updated membership.
Okay, you want a motion to approve those, sir?
Yep.
Okay, entertain a motion to approve the additions to our CJCC appointments. Okay, motion by Mr. Weaver. Mr. Duffy?
Second.
Second by Mr. Duffy, approving the appointments of Lieutenant Mike Waller, Grant Gerber, and Julia Lyons. Correct?
Correct.
And we'll do a voice vote with this again. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, anything else, Mr. Buckholz, for public safety?
So that's it, Mr. Chairman.
All right, moving on then to number 10, opioid settlement update. Mr. Alvarado?
Yes, I've given you a verbal update on this the last couple of months as this paperwork's been in the works for a few months. Prior to this, you had approved the settlement with the distributors and some of the manufacturers. The final piece is the settlement with the retailers. And as if you read through the attachments, you can see that it's a settlement agreement with the likes of Walgreens, Walmart, CVS, and a couple others. This will increase the amount of money that we're getting in settlement dollars. At this point, I can't give you an exact dollar amount because it will all depend on how many nationally, how many entities opt into the settlement. Wisconsin is a bit unique in that for the most part, we're all tied together with, I think, 71 out of the 72 counties and a few of the municipalities. At this point, I'm going to recommend you approve all of this. Otherwise, you will get no settlement dollars. But there really is no ability to change this, or this is just kind of following along with the other government entities. So what you have is the opioid settlement with the retailers as a resolution, and then the amendments to the MOUs that you already had in place from the prior settlements. As a rough ballpark, we've been told that we should expect about 60 to 80% more dollars than what we already received. We're going to get 480,000 before, so it could be $250,000 to $350,000 more in settlement. That will, and we don't know the period of years, but we expect it to be roughly the same as the prior settlement of up to 15 years, but spread over 15 years.
Okay. Ms. Hassel?
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution and the two amendments as presented.
Thank you. Motion by Ms. Hessel.
Second.
Second by Mr. Savitsky, approving the resolution and the amendments. The addendums. The addendums. Thank you.
It'd be, just for clarification, items A, B, and C, correct? Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, do you want to set up voting, please?
The voting is open.
Open to vote. Motion to approve the resolution and addendums with the MOU.
And I have Mr. Rusk, could you vote, please?
Yep. We can vote now, Madam Clerk?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Chris Rusk, can you vote, please?
Mr. Maestri,
Yes.
Mr. Peters,
Yes.
and it passes 13 as well. Motion carries.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, anything else on the opioid settlement then, Mr. Alvarado? And how does the county plan to use that money, sir?
Good question. So item D on here is a discussion on the, or not a discussion, but a presentation on strategy. So through the course of the CJCC meetings and talking within the departments about how to address the opioid issue and overdoses and how we are going to allocate or spend the settlement dollars, we really look to public health to put together a strategy that would be all encompassing. They're the best positioned, I think, to do this. They've done a lot of work on the community health index and the gaps we have in services. So tonight we have Julia Lyons, Public Health Officer, to give us a presentation on what they've put together. And we anticipate next month coming back with the budget to implement their plan.
Okay, Ms. Lyons?
Okay, good evening. So what we have been working on over the last number of months is to put together a gap analysis on what we have in our community And I've been able to attend 2 of the opioid summits that WCA has put on. And at one of the summits, they gave us this framework that we actually use to be able to put our gap analysis into areas that would be easier to understand as we move forward. So these are evidence-based solutions from prevention through recovery. I won't go through every one of these on this page. I just wanted to show you that it's set up as prevention, harm reduction, treatment, and recovery. And then we have each of these really spelled out in really what evidence-based solutions would be. The boxes that are highlighted bold are the ones that we want to put priority on first. Then we identified what we have not, and potential solutions. As you look through this, it is this really brief writing, so I'll go through a few of these. We've had some more work done since we've developed this and are moving forward. So educational campaigns are important to be working through. We have had a vaping panel. We have DARE in Winter and Hayward, and LCO has a similar program. What we do not really have in place is education or training for staff and students really on the current drugs, what we're seeing out there. We did try to set some things up this fall, but we'll be looking to identify exactly what the schools need and are looking for, and get some unified training hopefully going into the following year. The other thing that we can look at is interventions tailored specifically to the community. Our law enforcement has a Handle with Care program. One of the things that has been identified for us is that we do not have ordinance on vaping that is countywide. The city of Hayward has an ordinance, but we are not able to enforce anything countywide. Our tobacco ordinance only covers tobacco, and nicotine is in vapes, and that prevents us from moving forward. The other thing that was identified was that maybe more mentor programs for kids. We do have the Boys and Girls Club at LCO, but kind of looking on how we might expand some of that. And the other thing that we were thinking of doing as we look at interventions tailored to the community is actually interviewing incarcerated people to identify for those that are in due to substance misuse, and be able to identify areas that may have helped them or identify what caused them to go down that direction. And I'll just briefly go through some of these. There are prescription monitoring programs in the state of Wisconsin. There are opioid prescribing guidelines that have been updated. The hospital has guidelines where you need to identify the clinic guidelines and make sure everybody has got the latest practices. Looking at the regulating of promotion and marketing of opioids, that's really on a national level. We'd be basically looking to make sure that clinics and hospitals do have a non-incentive policy for prescribing. Better mental health care is definitely something we have heard all around. We do have therapists, but they're limited. Needing to focus in more on teen care and access to providers. Solutions may be telehealth. We need to really work with economic development in order to bring more staff into the area. It's not that jobs are not available, it's bringing people in to work these jobs and finding places to live. And then safe disposal locations for drugs in general. And we do have 3 drop boxes, but they're not at a non-law enforcement location. This year we have working with Clean Sweep to be able to get a non-law enforcement location. And right now, actually, we're working on drug take-back days and making sure we're promoting those. Okay, any questions before I move forward into harm reduction?
Ms. Hessel.
Do you have a recovery to work program that you're going to initiate? I mean, seeing as though 82% of the people in jail are not employed, is there a recovery to work thought process?
That'll be in more of the recovery area. So as we work through I'll kind of cover that. That is an area that we want to look at. But there's plenty of opportunity, Ms. Hassel, for sure. Harm reduction. The areas of harm reduction are fentanyl test strips being available, naloxone access and training, syringe programs, and supervised injection sites. As we look through, we have some of these services available. Narcan is being distributed through North Lakes and LCO. North Lakes is losing their distribution. The health department has just been able to pick up the grant. So we'll be able to do that. We'll be looking at the fentanyl test strips. We do have a sharps disposal program at Public Health. We also are using that as an option at Clean Sweep. We want to be able to look to see if we can find more needle drop boxes so that we can make sure our community stays clean. Supervised injection sites. At this point, what that really means is that you actually have a place where people can come and use, and they're being monitored, and we make sure that that they don't overdose. It's probably not something that is needed in our area, but what we're doing right now is collecting data on overdose fatalities to identify where these deaths are occurring. We believe most are just kind of out in the community and not in specific areas. So that is what is happening in that area. In treatment, looking at increased access to treatment, telehealth, we are going to be working with our local providers to be able to identify a more seamless framework where or a network where they can have set places that they can send people to for treatment once they identify that people are ready to move on to that next step. Also looking a little bit more into telehealth to see what else we can put in place there. Medication assisted therapies. We do have 2 opportunities for people, one at North Lakes and one at Baziki. One of the things that was identified is there's probably misunderstanding public acceptance of MAT that we will be working on. We don't have a MAT program in the jail, which is something we'll be looking at. And really the overdose handoff from an overdose at the ED or that ends up at the ED and leaving directly from there, we would like to get a warm handoff into the MAT assisted places. Looking at expanding diversity for treatment in our workforce, Northwest Tech is really adding on courses and availability. Improving healthcare responder workforce addiction training. We have very limited crisis intervention education out there, so we'll be looking at that for healthcare, law enforcement, fire, and EMS. We'll also be considering stigma of people seeking care, access to culturally competent care. Baziki does a wonderful job. And treatment alternatives to incarceration, which is really moving forward very well with Justice Point and treatment court. And finally, recovery. So employment opportunities for people in recovery. We do have a workforce shortage. We do need to get information out there of the employer incentives for being able to hire. And we need to consider what we can do for coaches, for businesses, and for our employees to make sure that they're successful as they move forward. So definitely one of the areas we want to spend quite a bit of time in. Looking at expanded access to recovery housing, we do have some, we need more. Actually, we have just identified a small work group that will be moving forward looking at housing. Peer counseling, when you go to a lot of the trainings, you find that people that have really said that peer counseling, peer coaches have been really part of their success in their sobriety. And we do have some peer counselors, and there are education classes that are available through LCO University. So we do want to make sure that we're moving forward with that. And then incentive to support or sustain recovery. We do have some AA meetings, and we do not have any like long-term day treatment. Might be an area we want to look at. So one of the things that I just want to say, in addition to all of this, is as we look at these areas and we think about our funding that is available, there is not enough to put in a treatment center to be able to know that we would have enough staff up here to cover that treatment section, where we're thinking that we have the best chance of moving forward with the funding that we have is really focusing in the prevention area. Harm reduction is fairly easy to put into place, and recovery is especially important because we can send people away to treatment all we want, but if we don't provide a safe environment for them to come back to with employment and ways that they can have connections that keeps them away from the drugs, then they're just not going to be successful. So those are the areas that we're looking at focusing in on. I'll pause and see if you have any questions.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Helwig.
I have a couple issues. I've always been a big pusher on giving a clinic in this area. And you had mentioned prevention and then aftercare.
Recovery, yep, recovery.
Recovery, thank you. But treatment itself is a big part of that. I mean, you've got to treat the issue for them to go into recovery.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing, that something you got to look at more maybe than you are. Maybe I'm just, but that's just a point that I wanted to. And then is there going to be Narcan throughout the sites throughout the county, or?
Yeah, we're working on the work plan for these right now. We just were notified that we had gotten the Narcan grant. We've also found out that there is a grant available for dispensers for these. So that is a potential that we can apply for that grant. So just starting to have those discussions, developing work plans for each of these areas. Definitely not saying that treatment is not important. We have availability to get people to treatment. Eventually, we may be able to have treatment facility here. But even if we have a treatment facility here and we don't have a safe place for recovery, they're not going to be successful. So that's kind of the thought process as we move forward in where we need to prioritize as we put these plans together.
Quick follow-up on that. So do we currently have a location that they could be treated? Like you mentioned, Lake?
There's Ellie Phillips. There's different treatment centers that the medical clinics will connect people to. LCO, I believe, also has a treatment center that they typically use as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Ms. Hessel?
So how does that harm reduction work with our law enforcement? So you're saying you'd give them a safe place to be legal?
No, that is one of the potential, that's what's in those evidence-based options. I don't think that that's a place where we would be going with that. Where we do have some concerns just between treatment center and not understanding where law enforcement would be if we distribute naloxone and fentanyl test strips. I don't think that it's a concern. We just need to get our law enforcement and treatment centers talking to one another.
Yeah, I would encourage you to put more emphasis on the prevention piece and not the allowability piece.
Oh, Mr. Weaver, yes, sir.
I just have a quick question. Does the naloxone or the Narcan work on fentanyl?
Yes.
Okay. And then one of the other things is maybe in part of one of those, I know that the roadside cleanups can't be done by kids, or a lot of volunteers are dropping that out. Is that something we're going to have to support the county highway and the townships to clean up the roadsides because of the amount of needles and drug paraphernalia found on the sides of the road?
That's a good question. I will have to look into that a little bit further.
Thank you.
Mr. Bissonnette?
Hey, Julia.
Hello?
So first I want to start off with a comment and kind of a question, but you know, personally, I've went through this with immediate family members. So a lot of these strategies I see we do need, but in regards to treatment, I was one of them guys that always thought that treatment was a cure-all. But the double-edged sword on that is, in a lot of cases, these people that are going to treatment, all they're doing is broadening their network of people that are involved in drug dealing and stuff like that. Now, like Ellie Phillips, they have to recognize this, correct? And is there anything strategy that they would have to try to prevent that from happening?
Yeah, those connections at the treatment centers.
Mhm.
Well, that's a place that as we focus more in on treatment, and we can definitely look into what their strategies are for preventing that. But I think that is one of the issues, just going away and connecting to those people who may not be successful, and then they have a link outside. So very good point though, thank you.
Okay, so my next question is, and I don't know if you're aware of this, but I've read recently where, and I know it's in Minnesota, if it's in Minnesota, it's in Wisconsin, but fentanyl resistant, Narcan resistant fentanyl is, I would assume here. Have you seen anything like that yet?
Turn up.
Oops.
Turn that down. I can hear it.
Okay, thank you. Yes, we have heard just recently that it is in the cities. I have not been able to talk to law enforcement yet to see if they've identified any that they've brought in. So that will be a whole nother brand new thing that we'll have to learn to deal with, and what will be the next steps with that.
Ms. Lyons, this is Ed Peters.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do to include vaping in our countywide nicotine ordinance?
We're looking actually at other counties that have already developed that, and we'll be looking at the city ordinance and be able to bring that forward, working with law enforcement, because that'll come up through them. So it should be something that we should be able to work through and put in place.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then I have one question, Ms. Lyons. You mentioned that we have two clinics or areas that serve the MAT program, right? The medication assisted therapy.
Correct.
Do they accept uninsured people at these places too? Because I'm thinking a lot of these might be not insured folks. Are we going to help them as well?
What we need to do is actually check with them because of the federally funded programs. And then LCO does do with Beziki does support for sure LCO members. So I think we're covered pretty good, but we'll be working more with North Lakes and Beziki to identify if we do need to provide maybe scholarships or additional assistance that could be funded through the opioid settlement.
Okay, any other questions, concerns for Ms. Lyons? If not, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate all the work you put into this. All right, if there's no more, we'll move on into number 11, Public Works Committee Chair Report, and Mr. Kinsley is not here, so Mr. Alvarado, do you want to take this?
I'll take that.
Oh,
This
Michelle,
portion of it.
okay.
Real quick, some things that were mentioned at the meeting from the minutes. Mr. Leslie did advise that Thompson's been doing a great job in the snow removal. Been much busier this year. They're working on the master plan, and there's going to be a team put together, and I guess I was kind of volunteered to be on that team. So I will be working on that. Mr. Bicey, I believe he's our current highway commissioner. He said that the road bans went into effect on March 17th at noon. And that's main thing on the notes, and I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Alvarado now because of a very big issue, ATV.
So road bans go on tomorrow then, correct, Mr.
Tomorrow.
Howard? Tomorrow at noon?
I'm sorry, yes.
Okay.
I have no idea what date it is, obviously.
No, they don't go on tomorrow at noon, they go on at 12:01. Right?
Okay. All right.
Let me double check with the minutes out of that.
Okay. I've never seen them go on at noon. That's like what she meant.
So, Mr. Alvarado then?
Yes, I'll just pick up the ATV renewals and ordinance. It was, it's been a. Okay, I'll pick that up in my report at the end, if that's all right. Yep. Yeah, I have B in my administrator's report, so I'll just cover that with that. So the ATV UTV ordinance has been a discussion for a number of months, and it's ongoing. Conversations continue with the Alliance and the townships and with the LCO. And so the committee, as far as the ordinance, setting up a conversation with the LCO, we did look at some additional revisions in language that is being considered and reviewed, and there'll be more to come on the ordinance. Under our current ATV policy in February of every month, or excuse me, February of every year, the ATV, UTV routes that have already been approved are considered for renewal. Partly due to the change or absence of the highway commissioner, we did not get that accomplished until March. So at last week's meeting, the Public Works Committee did renew all of the existing ATV, UTV routes that were already approved, except any segments of those routes that are on the reservation. That is at the request of the LCO and pending additional conversations with them. They would like to talk about those further. So, so those segments were not approved for renewal at this point.
I just had a question. So
Oh,
during
yeah,
public,
Cecil.
on this discussion in that meeting, is Mr. Bissonette, Mr. Rusk, and Mr. Schuman, are they acting as the county board or are they acting as LCO tribe when they're in the discussions at these meetings?
I can answer that. We're county board because I represent my district in the town of Hayward.
Okay, I just didn't know which board you were acting on behalf at those meetings.
I understand. I can answer that.
I agree with them. They've done a very well job of doing that.
I have a question, Andy.
Mhm.
So if they're not renewed, does that mean they're not routes currently?
Correct.
So if we're traveling those routes currently on publicly funded roads, then will we be pulled over and ticketed?
You could be, I believe so, yes.
I'll be riding them.
The sheriff's in the audience if you want to talk to him further about that.
I'll tell you the color I have.
And I will add too, there, I mean, part of our conversations is on concurrent jurisdiction on those roads. It's not just the county ordinance, there's also tribal ordinance that would exist on the reservation as well. That's part of the conversation we were having to kind of sort this out. Do you know other questions on the committee report? I think that pretty much covers what we've discussed there. Can I move on to item D?
Yeah.
Okay.
Letter D, sir.
So as, I'm gonna share my screen here for. So as everybody's aware, our prior commissioner, Mr. Gedhart, retired in January. We've had the position posted for over 2 months. We did interviews last week, and we believe we have a good candidate to succeed Mr. Gedhart. I'm bringing to the board a request to appoint John Pino as the next Sawyer County Highway Commissioner. Just a little background on Mr. Pino. He's a native of the Bruce Lexon area. He's a graduate of Ely Community College in aviation. Not really applicable to the job, but he's got considerable experience in the construction and contracting world, performing as a foreman, superintendent, and project manager for multiple construction companies. I'll point out that they're generally are not, they're not road crews or highway crews. It's been more in the area of installation of utilities, underground drilling, as well as just general construction. Currently working in the Twin Cities. Has worked on the road, but would like to get back to this area on a more permanent basis. He lives here part-time. Found he had a good balance of in the field, hands-on work, the getting dirty part, but also a lot of experience managing employees and performing administrative tasks of hiring, payroll, bidding, scheduling of work and supervision. He has additional training in leadership and team building, which we thought would be very useful at the highway department. We feel he's the best candidate, offering the right energy for the position, the ability to manage and lead the staff and provide overall direction, including managing and prioritizing a budget, maintaining the county assets and representing the county with state and local bodies. Like I'd mentioned, his biggest weakness is probably the lack of working within a highway department or a similar operation. But he has already lined up resources to assist with that, including having a highway commissioner in another county be a mentor. And we've also, the county, I've identified some additional expertise and support that we could get him to learn that part of the job. I interviewed him along with HR, Mr. Kinsley, and staff from the highway department.
Okay.
They conducted all the interviews. This was our candidate that came out of that.
And Mr. Bicey is going to stay on our highway department as well, too,
Yes.
to assist.
Yep, Mr. Baizu has been operating as our operations manager as well as interim commissioner, and he will continue on as the operations manager. He'll be a big part of helping Mr. Pino get acclimated to the department.
Wonderful. Mr. Buckholz.
I make a motion to approve John Pino as our new highway commissioner. Sawyer
Okay.
County.
Mr. Hellwig.
I will second that motion.
Okay, motion by Mr. Buckholz, second by Mr. Hellwig, to approve the appointment of Mr. John Pino as our Sawyer County Highway Commissioner. Is there any further discussion? Anybody online, Alex? Okay, if not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Alvarado.
Just want to make one additional comment in the discussions with bringing Mr. Pino on board. We did discover there's a ordinance on the books for the county that was adopted when Mr. Gethart was appointed the commissioner, that Mr. Gethart did not do the 2-year. There's a statute that indicates that unless the county does something different, the highway commissioner is elected every 2 years. When Mr. Gethart was appointed as commissioner, the ordinance was created that he did not have to go through the 2-year election, but every commissioner after him would have to. That was a discussion point with Mr. Pino, and we agreed to make a good faith effort to bring that back to the board for consideration of eliminating the 2-year election. And I'll bring that back at some point in the future before his 2 years is up. But it is somewhat an antiquated statute since the time of the statute, all county employees, unless otherwise noted, are at-will employees and could be terminated at any time. So it's just, his request was for the board to consider the same thing that Mr. Gethart had. So just want to make you aware of that. That was part of our negotiation.
All right, thank you. Okay, so does that conclude, Mr. Howie?
Bring up the courthouse remodeling, I think.
I'll do that when I report to you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay. Do you have anything else, Mr. Hellwig, from Public Works, sir?
No, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to number 12, Land, Water, Forest Resource Committee Chair Report. Mr. Betcher?
Yes, sir. We held our monthly committee meeting on Wednesday, March 8th, and we then held a special meeting tonight at 6 p.m. where we approved the sale of the property in Radisson. The lake ice is still okay, and the county snowmobile trails remain open. However, ice fishing shacks needed to be removed by the 15th. And as discussed, the road ban is going into effect at 12:01 p.m. tomorrow, so 1 minute afternoon, for all town roads with the limit of about, I think, 4 tons, and then all county roads with the limit of, I think, 16 tons, except for County Road B. Despite the heavy snow, logging has been ahead of schedule with gross timber sales already at $675,000 for the year. Recons and inspections are on target. There was a recent confirmed wolf kill of an elk on tribal land. Looking into that further, there's some ongoing collaring in the adjacent counties of elk. The committee voted to approve sending the recreational trail aids resolution to the full board, which unless there's any questions, we can move to now. 12B. Any questions?
Anybody online, Alex? No, Mr. Petcher, proceed with letter B, sir.
So 12B, the recreational trail aids resolution, it's not abnormal. This has to be redone every year. And I don't think it's any different than previous years. So if we,
Okay, Mr. Hellwig,
I make a motion to approve the recreational trail aid.
and
Mr. Duffy,
I'll second.
motion by Mr. Hellwig, second by Mr. Duffy to approve the resolution for outdoor recreational aids, which we do annually. Mr. Becker, is that what you mentioned?
yes,
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Anybody online, Alex? Okay. If not, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Mr. Betcher?
That completes my report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Number 13, Health and Human Services Board Chair Report. Mr. Schleter?
Thank you. Yes, we met last Tuesday. The biggest thing that happened is we accepted the retirement of Paul Grahovac as our Director of Health and Human Services. And he probably has some more about that when he gets to his report about, but we have been searching already, looking for a replacement. Health and Human Services is looking at this as a opportunity to review what we are doing now, what we were doing in the past, and what we might do in the future. Other than that, we had our behavioral health reports, Child Protective Services, economic support. Lorraine Gouget, our liaison with the LCO reservation, talked about the happenings out there, construction of housing, low COVID outbreaks. Don't use the word outbreak. A low number of people tested positive for COVID, which our county nurse also confirmed here throughout the whole county. Other than that, there were no action issues taken, so it was adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Schleter. Are you going to talk, Mr. Alvarado, in your report about the staffing issues in certain areas of Health and Human Services? Okay. All right, any other questions, concerns for Health and Human Services? If not, I appreciate that, Mr. Schleter. We'll move on then to number 14, Finance Committee Chair Report. Again, Mr. Alvarado. Or wait, do you want it, sir? Got it. All right.
Yes, in Mr. Kinsley's absence, I'll try my best to fill in the Finance Committee report. There was no treasurer update. I gave a brief update on the Native American taxation issue regarding from the appellate court decision. For those who aren't aware, this is going to result in some properties being removed from the tax roll. So it's primarily, we believe, in the towns of Town of Hayward, Town of Bass Lake, where most of those properties exist, and both of those have now compiled parcel data or parcel listings, in the process to remove those from the tax roll is underway. We don't anticipate, as opposed to some of the counties up north that have the same situation, a significant impact on local budgets or a shift in property tax to non-tribal properties. But that it's going to take a little while to flesh that out here. Noteworthy, in the governor's budget, there is a provision that would make local governments whole and then reduce in the first year and then reduce that amount by 10% every year for 10 years to, I guess, lessen the impact of that change in taxation. From the finance department, sales tax distribution or payments are tracking as expected. There's no drop off. The finance director projected a total sales tax collection this year of a little over $3 million. So as long as the economy continues as it has been, we hopefully will reach that amount. They're working on the 22 budget and closing those things out. As you've been through the county budget process, this is the time of the year where a lot of the budget information is known, but right now we're closing out Health and Human Services and the Highway Department as state aid payments come in for those programs. The investment data this year is significantly different than other years due to the increase in the Fed rate. So we are seeing interest in the amount of, let me see here, around $50,000 coming in from having investments in the 4% range. So that's, I guess, one upside of the increase in the Fed rate is that we're seeing more interest coming in. And then we also reviewed ambulance billing to see where that's at. Collections are tracking a little bit ahead of the prior billing company, which is what we had hoped for. But we still are not to our first full year with the new billing company, so we don't have a full picture. And then there's also discussion, we have a township, town of Edgewater, that the initial request was to essentially remove them from the ambulance levy because they participate in another ambulance service out of the Birchwood area. There's really no practical way for us to remove them from the ambulance levy. So the follow-up request is that we consider taking a portion of our ambulance levy, I guess, refunding it to the township so they can pay their cost to the Birchwood ambulance service. So there's still some review to be done there to whether that is something that can be done and how it can be done and if it should be done. And that'll come back to the committee with another report next month for them to consider. And other than that, we reviewed the ARPA opioid and local area travel consistency funds on hand and how those are being distributed.
Andy, we closed out 22 yet to know whether we had a surplus or deficit? And what are you expecting?
We're expecting we'll be under budget.
Okay.
Yep. At this point, finance director is projecting that we had budgeted some fund balance like Health and Human Services, that we will not need to do that, so that money will stay within our general fund. But
Is there anything else on carbon credits? Is that something?
Nope, that's going to be a little while. I mean, we've been providing information to ANU as they've requested it. They're doing their due diligence. Kind of the science part of that, where they have to certify the amount of credits we can produce, is what they're doing right now.
Okay.
So even we did check in with Bayfield County. They're over 18 months now into when they signed up for the carbon credits, and they don't have any sale or money incoming yet.
Mr. Weaver.
I have a question, and it's, excuse my ignorance, but it's back on the taxation question. How can the county take federal tax exempt land and claim it as tax delinquent?
Not following you.
Well, if there's land on the reservation that's no longer tribal member owned, but the county owns it or not took it for tax delinquency, how does that happen? And then if it's federally tax exempt land, how does the county take it for tax delinquency?
Right, we can't.
Well, then how did all this land get taken from the reservation into the county's hands?
It's not in our hands. So these properties I'm talking about.
It was though.
Well, the properties I'm talking about, that's the appellate court, is that the land was at one time tribal land, went into non-native ownership.
Through tax delinquency, through the county.
Well, the county doesn't own it anymore though. At some point, the county must have
sold it,
or.
How do they illegally take the land though?
I don't know. I think I'm getting baited down the road. All I know is the property is now once again owned by either the tribe or a tribal member. And they were still getting taxed on it because it was at some point privately owned. The court has said that those lands now should not be taxed and need to be removed from the tax roll. They're roughly, I believe the town of Hayward, there's 20-ish parcels, and the town of Bass Lake, there's 84 parcels.
And I think we can bring this, Mr. Weaver, to our attorney or to a committee, finance committee, discuss it further there. Okay, but good questions. All right, and are you gonna elaborate on shared revenue that we learned, the surplus at the state, or is that gonna be in your other report?
I thought you were gonna give that report. No, I can mention it a little bit. I'm not gonna get too much detail about it.
Okay. All right, anything else for Finance Committee? Anybody online, Alex? All right, thank you, Mr. Alvarado. Number 15, Economic Development, UW Extension, Mr. Duffy.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We met on March 6th, and I have a short report. We first of all heard from Northwest Regional Planning. They informed us that they have a lot of funds available at 0% interest for home improvement loans, and also informed us that they're going to have a hazardous waste program again this year. We then heard from Economic Development Corporation, and they've informed us that they have hired Dalton Hessel to highlight some of the local businesses. And they're going to be scheduling a local business social event this spring. And Andy's going to be the guest speaker for the first event.
No, wrong, Andy. Andy Donahue from the SBDC is gonna be.
Oh, what's great. Okay. Oh, okay, wonderful. So we then heard from both libraries, Hayward and Winter. They informed us what was going on in their spring programs. We also heard from Andy as far as the broadband update. I assume he may cover that in his report. We had a new topic we brought up, Andy brought up actually, is the DNR nursery project. And there's some interest in the community for a land swap of the county on the DNR nursery and some other vacant lands to provide property for county housing development. So we'll hear more about that in the future, and Andy may cover that in his program tonight, his coverage tonight. He also shared with us the DNR has about 400 acres. But anyway, there's some interest in trying to work a swap out. They're not interested, the DNR, in selling it or giving it to us. So we'll see what happens. Then on Berkey, again, the record number of skiers, 11,500 skiers. The Berkey recognized the 2,000 volunteers to put on that event. Without these volunteers, there would be no event. And also we covered that CBS Sunday morning show had a full crew here from New York, and they're going to have a full program covering sometime this spring. A date hasn't been set yet, but assume it'll be nice coverage. Next year is the 50th year anniversary for the Berkey. They're planning to make that bigger and better than ever. Parking, again, continues to be a real problem. It looks like maybe the only way to handle that is to park cars out of the community and bus them in. But the trail is wide enough to handle more skiers, but the town is busting at the seams. So that's the big problem. This past weekend, the Berkey sponsored the Fat Bike Berkey. The Fat Bike Berkey is bikers who race on snow-covered Berkey trails. There were like 850 racers. They had 3 different races. They had a 50K, a 25K, and a 10K. And the bikers were happy and look like they'll all plan to come back next year. It grows every year, so it's going to be a popular event. So that, Mr. Chairman, completes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Any questions, Mr. Helwig?
Mr. Duffy, was there, I think I heard, I was from the sheriff or somewhere that there was actually more skiers and visitors this year. And if that's the case, is it because of housing, like hotels?
Well, they average, every skier averages 2 people that accompany them, whether they're wives or husbands or girlfriends or whatever. So there's a lot of spouse. I mean, it's a problem. I mean, where do you put all these people? It's nice to have an event that's popular that people want to come. But accommodations are a problem, and it's tough to, they house them all the way to Duluth and Superior and Ashland and Rice Lake and wherever, so it's a big event, a popular event. So we can be proud of it.
Absolutely. Mr. Schluter.
Yeah, Tom, the Weiss Library building, I understand is having some problems. Have they talked to our committee about that?
No, I'm not aware of that.
Okay, apparently some shifting of I don't know all the details, but I think it's something maybe we should be aware of or
Yeah.
become aware of.
Okay, we'll check into it.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else for Mr. Duffy in economic development? Anybody online, Alex? Okay, if not, number 16, county administrators report. Mr. Alvarado.
So the courthouse expansion renovation of we're about $6.17 million worth of work into it, about $2.5 million left to go. With the change from February, our original construction amount is increased to $8,674,000, and we still have about $45,000 left in contingency. A lot of that got eaten up here in the last couple of months. So going into phase 2, it's going to be pretty tight. The HVAC and electrical equipment that delayed the project from turning over this week is arrived and is in place. And so now we are on track to do the turnover at the end of March. And we'll be transitioning over to the new building the first week in April. As part of that planning of how to transition over to the new building and people looking at how they're going to take occupancy and start looking at turnover or the start of phase 2. There are some small things coming up, like, are we getting window blinds, or I need this piece of furniture. So we're working through those things, but all in all, I think we'll be able to move over there without too many issues at the beginning of April and get the courtroom up and running. And then they can start gutting this area right here and starting the remodel. So that's completed by August. I was over there a couple days ago, and I know some of us took a tour back in January for the board meeting, and it's hard to envision back then how it was going to look, but it's come a long ways. Very modern building, a lot of finished concrete rather than carpet, and some good things that will help on maintenance. So it'll be a nice facility.
Andy, when you see the county board meeting in their new room?
I was hoping in April, but IT has told me let's plan for May.
Okay.
And part of the reason is that room was used for staging a lot of the furniture order came in and they had to assemble, and they're farming it out to other parts of the building. So that'll be the last space to get cleared out, and also the last place to get all the courtroom is the priority. So the boardroom would be second for getting all the AV equipment in place. So if it's in April, it'll be a nice surprise, but plan on May.
Okay.
Correct. Yep. Personnel items, union negotiations. And I just don't have an update. There's been limited exchange. I think we will have something to talk about in the next week, but we're still talking that through. Recruiting, we do have a number of positions we're recruiting for. So like Mr. Schleter said, we did receive the resignation of our Human Services Director, Mr. Gahovic. That retirement, is April 28th. So the position has been posted and it's open until filled. So we're looking for good applicants right now because we'd like to get somebody on board hired before he is departed. In addition to the director's position, we've had significant issues in our children, youth, and family area with the CPS program and the caseworkers. I think I had mentioned maybe last month or just that week we had received 2 additional resignations. That was in addition to the 2 we had received before the end of last year. We did hire an LTE person, a retired CPS worker from another county to come in. That person also left their LTE role when the other resignations came in. So we are down to 1 social worker and our youth justice worker. There's a lot of reasons for why we've lost these CPS workers. Main reason is there's a lot of opportunity out there. Just about every county has a shortage in this area, which means it's also been difficult to get additional help to fill in our gaps. The state doesn't offer a whole lot of support. They're not going to come in and run our cases for us. But we have reached out to other counties. There's been a couple that have taken specific cases and they're running with them. And then we are also looking at contracted work. So some of the changes, there are going to be some changes in the human services area this year with the retirement of the director. We've also made some changes in the CPS area. So we have a new supervisor that's a contracted supervisor on a part-time basis. doing it remotely. That person has worked with other counties in similar situations. That she will help us through as best she can through the staffing. And then we also are bringing on some contracted agencies to perform some of the ongoing case management. We have contracted employees that work in other counties doing our on-call supervision. And we'll probably be bringing on a couple more contracted employees that do work in other counties to do after hours and weekend work just to help us keep up. Otherwise, we will burn out the people we have.
Andy, and I would guess that Child Protective Services is a mandated
Absolutely.
service to the state statute.
Yep.
Are we meeting that standard now?
There is
That's a loaded
no
question, but-
Yeah, it's a loaded question. There is no, I mean, we have to have the program. This children, DCF, Department of Children and Family supervises it. So we are working with them. There's not like a mandated level of service, but in cases, there's a mandated response time. So certain cases come in and then our supervisor that we have screens them in or out. And when they screen them in, they also have to screen them in as to whether there's immediate danger or if they can have a longer investigation. So we have been, did have to do some immediate investigations last week and weekend to meet those timelines. But yeah, it is going to be tenuous and it's going to be difficult until we can hire staff to fill those positions. We'll be leaning on every avenue. We've called former employees to see if they want to come back and do some additional work. We're talking to those other counties and we're talking to, honestly, some social workers from further away that we might have to pay them. We'll have to pay them to do their work, but we'll maybe pay for a night in a hotel and some mileage for them to come up and handle cases until we can get more fully staffed.
Mr. Helwig?
Andy, you mentioned that there's, a lot of want out there, a lot of need out there for the counselors. So are they leaving because of pay?
Nobody has cited that, and that's why, I mean, people ask why they're leaving. It's always a assortment of answers. Nobody has come in and said, I'm leaving so they pay me more. Sometimes it's, I can work closer to home and I'll get paid more, I'll get paid the same amount. Some are leaving for other, they're not going to work at another CPS unit. They're going to work in something that is more of the interest to them or is not as taxing. CPS is a difficult job. It's burnt out. So some have left to go to different, still I would say in the human service area, but not to CPS work. We've looked at pay and you as the prior to me, just I think 18 months ago, 2 years ago, the compensation for those positions was adjusted to get closer to the market. So I know people ask about pay for this position and others, and pay is always a factor at some level, but is it predominant to pay? I don't think it is. But we're looking at other changes we've made and will make to try to make it a better situation. In addition to the CPS workers, we have a birth to 3 coordinator. We had somebody that's leaving the area, administrative fiscal assistant due to retirement, and we continue to work through a mental health therapist. Driver operator at the highway department. We had somebody leave for another position in the county, not making more money. And then we know we have a retirement in the next couple of months, so we're recruiting for those. We've highlighted the dispatch jailer situation, and it's very fluid. We've been hiring, but we've been losing, so we'll continue to post for those. And then all of the positions in the ambulance service, basic EMTs, advanced, and paramedics have openings right now. So it's very active. I would say we're seeing more applications, but maybe not always in the areas we need the applications. Employee benefits, that's the promise this year, was to take a full look at our benefits program and what we're offering to the employees, not just for health insurance, but essentially across the board. We're bringing in a new benefits consultant, Brown & Brown, who will help us look at our health insurance. We are going to take a close look at self-insurance because we've had a pretty good track record here the last couple of years as far as the utilization, where we might be able to offer a more competitive health insurance plan at the same or less cost, even if we structure it correctly. Let's see. My computer to wake up. I think we've kind of discussed the airport. Mr. Hellwig updated on the master plan process kicking off. Outstanding items I've updated you on. We work cooperatively with LCO on. You heard from the public comment that we're really close to the child support MOU. It's kind of just been a nice back and forth. I think the relationship is good and things are working out. It's just a matter of getting the MOU done. So I think we're close there. The 161 agreement for child placement, that's been approved and signed. ATV, UTV ordinance is a work in progress. Otherwise, I think we've covered the opioids settlement, the CJCC, we handled that. And then last month, Mr. Schluter, Mr. Schumer and I attended the WCA legislative event in Madison. Probably not surprisingly, it was kind of a two-day event with two different perspectives on the state budget. Obviously, you've heard in the news about a surplus at the state level, so I think everybody down there realizes they need to do something. I think you'll see some changes in local government funding. How that happens, there's two different perspectives on. We know what the governor's budget looks like as far as there is. His proposal would send additional money here in addition to the shared revenue we're already getting. It would also give counties the ability to, through referendum, adopt an additional 0.5% sales tax. Now we await the legislature. They're doing listening sessions right now to gather information to how they're going to put together their budget. They've also been talking about local government revenue, and I think they'll have some proposal of how that will happen to get more money down to the local level. Essentially, we're delivering services of the state. So I think both sides know that's one of the top priorities. And mental health is the other one. Both sides are talking about it. That'd be a great assistance to our Human Services Department to have additional dollars to deal with mental health issues. But beyond that, either the
Andy,
gentlemen
with
want to get into
the
that.
0.5% sales tax increase referendum, would that, what committee would look at that? Finance for us? We would go ahead with that?
Yeah, finance, admin committee, one of those would have to take it on. You come to the county board and approve a referendum to go on the ballot.
And then, Madam Clerk, what election would we present that referendum? Is there a time frame for that? I remember there is.
Yeah, I don't know. You have to wait till the budget's adopted and that provision is actually made into law. But I don't know if there's any other details of when you could, probably November at the earliest, I would guess.
We don't have our schedule at all.
Okay.
Yeah. Very long way out.
What would be the amount of a 0.5% sales tax? Yes.
We have a 0.5% sales tax now that generates us 2.8 million last year. And all I would say when I think of that is like with that authority comes great responsibility. Like if you're gonna, there'd have to be some discussions. We're getting way ahead of the train here, but you'd want to talk about how that's going to affect the property taxes and how you're going to use those monies.
Mr. Schluter, you would say anything? You're good? Okay. All right, any other questions for Mr. Alvarado and his report?
Can I just offer up one of just to follow up on Mr. Duffy's comments? So I did take that to the Economic Development Committee regarding the DNR nursery. It's kind of a conversation that's been in bits and pieces in the community, and it really needed one entity kind of essentially pull it together and present our case down in Madison. The initial response from the DNR is that they're using the property. There's some question as to whether they could use it better, but that because it is situated adjacent to the city, adjacent to the utilities, next to the highway, on the trail system, down the road from the schools, it seems like a very developable property. And obviously, we're all aware of a housing crunch here and in most parts of the state. So we wanted to, have the state consider freeing that land up for development, potentially through a land swap. Just wanted to clarify, there's about 140 acres there, and it's half owned by the DNR and half owned by the Department of Interior. So we've just working with our legislators down in Madison. We'll be requesting either just to have a conversation with the DNR about how that could happen and if they're using it, how they're using it, and if there's a better use.
Cecil.
If we did the land swap, how would that affect the carbon credit? Because isn't that based on the current forest that we have?
Yeah, we'd have to either, for the 140 acres, it'd be a minimal actual impact, but you'd have to either not enroll that land in the credit, or if it was already enrolled, pay to get it out.
Okay, anything else? Alex, anyone online? If not, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Please drive safely going home. Yes. Oh, he's, okay. Correspondence, reports, conferences. Mr. Betcher? Sorry. sir.
Yeah, I don't know if we're this, I mean, we're already adjourned, so if people want to get up
No, go ahead, sir.
and leave, they can, but I think most people know that I'm leaving the county, and as a result, I have to leave
Mr. Duffy?
leave the board.
Mr. Betcher has the floor.
So I'm not, quitting. I just, the policy states that I can't serve as a supervisor if I don't live in my district. So my final meeting was planned to be next month, but I just found out earlier today I'm going to be gone almost the whole month of April. So this right here is going to be my last board meeting. I will be at zoning tomorrow morning. So I don't have like a speech prepared. Just wanted to, thank the board, especially Andy. You've been a great help. Lynn, really appreciate everything you've done. Sheriff, thank you. Mr. Schlender, thank you for giving me some guidance early on as a new supervisor and sharing your CrossFit routine with me. Thank you for that. So I really want to acknowledge the zoning committee though. So when I got here, I only really wanted to be on one committee, land, water, forest, resources. But chairman said I have to be on at least 2 or 3. So I got put on zoning, a little hesitant, but I really have learned to enjoy that. And I've been the chair of that committee for the last year. And I know everybody has their own challenges on each committee, but zoning is a little bit unique in that every single vote, every conditional use permit, every rezone request is going to be contentious because you're dealing with neighboring property owners, and it's always not a fight, but there's a lot of passion and emotion in every single vote. So I just want to thank the committee for taking, even though we don't agree on everything, I appreciate the fact that everybody does the research and listens to each side carefully and makes well-educated and informed decisions that are not based on emotion as much as they are on facts. So that's been, it's been challenging, but also rewarding. So wanted to thank the zoning committee, especially, and Jay as well. He's a great help. So like I said, I don't have a speech prepared. Just wanted to thank everybody and say it's my last meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Betcher. All right, and with that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Drive careful going home.